2016 election news. Here we go for another year of races and contestants, especially from around our area, and what we intend to do for forums. The elections that we've targeted of special interest is the City Council election. Of course, we've run forums there before, and we intend to do it again. And the State Assembly District and the U.S. Representative for 25th Congressional District. One of the things that we're able to do that some of the other political organizations are not able to do is we're able to invite everybody. So we always do. And also we want to talk a little bit about the Los Angeles County Supervisors District. Now the reason why they're divided in the way they are is because we actually talked about handling them different. We have a certain amount of time that we can devote, and we have a certain number of meetings, and so we can't quite do everything that we might want to do. From a standpoint of the City Council, to date, we have 3 candidates that are running. Tim Ben Boydson is running, but he hasn't really kicked off his campaign yet, and I'm going to ask him. We'll find out when he's going to go do that. I'm running. You know that. My campaign kickoff is tomorrow at Route 66, and Bob Keller is running. He's an incumbent, and he had a kickoff in Stevenson Ranch toward the end of last year. One of the things that you should really know is that we don't really file for the election until July. So it will actually be between July 18th and August the 12th when we'll actually know exactly who's running. The way this works, if you've never done it before, is that if you decide you want to run for a particular office, you first file with the state and open a committee. And the rules now say that your campaign committee's name has to include what you're running for and what year, what the date is. But you don't actually run for the election itself. You don't actually file for it until July. I've saw the article in the paper, and I called into the city clerk, and we will be filing here in Santa Clarita, which is not the same as some of the other elections where they'll be forced to file in Norwalk. If no incumbents sign up, we know that's not going to happen in this particular case, but then they extend the filing dates by 1 week. So if you have a particular race, and this works this way on any races, you'll see it works the same way in others. If at the end of the filing period, an incumbent hasn't filed, they extend the period of time a little bit, thinking that a whole bunch of more people are going to run and jump in and throw their hat in the ring. For us, we talked about this at the last board meeting, and we set the date of August the 17th for our Canyon Country style meet and greet. And as you recall, the way that works is that each candidate will get an opportunity to introduce themselves, answer questions from the audience, and sum it up. And the questions will come directly from the audience. There'll be a microphone set right up in the front, and people will come right up and ask a question. So they're not filtered in any way, and the candidates will have no idea what they're going to be asked. Dates are first come, first served, and the reason why it says that is because supposing now that we end up with more candidates that we're going to handle in one meeting, and we shove it over to the next meeting, the first candidates that accept the invitation get preference in which date they want. And that's we try to be as fair as possible. For the California State Assembly, to date we have 2 candidates running. Both are local people, so we thought everybody would really be interested in this election as well. One is Christy Smith and one is Scott Wilk. Now if you'll notice, there's no D's or R's behind anybody's name here. And the reason for that is because we are a nonpartisan organization, so we don't handle it that way. And if you happen to be a candidate, then you're running, then we're going to invite you. And they'll probably, when they get here, tell you, Christy will say she's a Democrat, and Scott will say he's a Republican, unless someone's going to surprise me with what they have to do. For the House of Representatives, again, we have some local candidates. And you'll also notice that we always put the candidates' names in alphabetical order, so by last name. And I hope I got the rest of the charts that way, but that's always our intent, to try to be as fair as possible. But I'll start one down the list. Maria Goodside, who is local. Steve Knight, who is the incumbent. And Steve Knight was here at one of our earlier meet and greets. And Lou Vince, who is a resident of Aquadulce, I believe, or Acton. And he's on the Aquadulce Town Council. Right? Aquadulce Town Council? Yeah. And so all of a sudden, we thought we had 3, but all of a sudden we had another gentleman jump into the fray, and this is Brian Caforio. And so I think it's going, right now there's 4, and we'll see what happens then.
Will it be available before the primary?
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a minute here. We're going to tell you what our intent is, and then we'll see. And it wraps around the primaries, and it also wraps around the availabilities that we have, because you have to take both into consideration. We don't have enough time to do meet and greets on all of these things before the primaries, and then do debates again afterwards. We're just out of time. So we'll chat about that a little bit as well. For the candidates to date for LA County Supervisor, we have 5. Catherine Barger was here at the Canyon Country Advisory Committee and talked a little bit about what was going on in the county. Michael Englander, Elin Carr, Bob Huff, and Era Nazarian. Okay, so those are the 5 candidates, and that could expand as well. So what we decided to do, well, let's just talk about their filing dates, for example. Because they have a primary election, their filing dates are earlier. So they'll have filing deadlines in March. March 11th is the filing deadline for all of those elections. And if no incumbents file, then it would be extended to March the 16th. With a primary election on June the 7th, 2016. And I thought it was interesting, but the election website indicated the vote by mail deadline is March the 29th for the primary, and on the general election, November the 8th, the vote by mail deadline is November the 1st. So when we talked about it, we said, well, let's see what we can do. So one of the things was to do a meet and greet opportunity for the State Assembly in March, and the congressional districts in April. And then possibly a potential debate after the primary. But we're still going to raise questions directly by the attendees, because we discussed this before. When we get down to only 2 candidates, it would be nice to have them debate each other and both answer the same questions. And so after the primaries, then there'll be just those 2. And if we included the supervisors in the meet and greet, there's too many of them. It overwhelms us. So we decided that it'd probably be best to do it where we have meet and greets for the state and congressional, and then a debate for the supervisor. Now, I just want you to remember that the Canyon Country Advisory Committee is nonpartisan. We're about as nonpartisan as you get. We are a 501c3 educational organization. So because of that, any 501c3, you are not allowed to campaign for individuals. So you'll never see the Canyon Country Advisory Committee coming out and saying, we're for this person or we're for that person. And so in order to run forums and debates and not be perceived as being campaigning, we have to give each candidate an equal opportunity. Now, if a candidate decides they don't want to accept our opportunity, well, that's a different question. We'll go ahead without them. But so far, we've never had that happen. Let's see what happens again this year. And just as a little aside, one of the ways that we've always done that is to ask the challengers first. Seems like the challengers always want to come. I don't understand that. And then all of a sudden, the incumbents decide maybe it's a good idea if we show up. So that's the way it works. Now, it's our policy as the Canyon Country Advisory Committee to only present issues which directly affect the Santa Clarita Valley. So you never hear us talk about what's going on in the White House or what's going on in Congress, unless it would directly affect the Santa Clarita Valley, and that's such a rarity, I don't think it's ever really happened. So we only talk about stuff that affects us. And when we do forums and so on and so forth like that, we don't provide any fact-checking or commentary on what the candidate has to say. We just put it out there, and we let all the individuals go ahead and do whatever they want to do. Doesn't mean you can't do it if you want to, but we as an organization will not do it. And we will not provide, as an organization, candidate endorsements. As an organization, we're not allowed to, and we will not. Members, however, are free to endorse any candidate of their choice. We make no restrictions on our board or our members. If you want to endorse somebody, you're perfectly welcome to do so. Things to consider is that in this 2016 election, I jumped ahead to 26, but I guess my time machine wasn't working very well that day. But in the 2016 election cycle, we have many local candidates, and that's why we thought that you would be interested in it. And I could even ask you, do you want to be able to ask questions and hear from them? Is that something that you think you would like to hear? Yes. And so we'll give all the candidates an equal opportunity, and hopefully they'll all accept our advice. One of the things that disappointed me greatly about this was Define Hugo. I wanted to hear from this guy. Really. You know, he's our local guy. He's a school teacher. He is running his self-funded zero campaign. You will have no signs. You will have no ads. You will have no handouts. He's going to do it all on social media. And I thought to myself, why are you doing this to yourself? But, you know, we could maybe thought we could talk to him. The reason why we're not going to is because that's how many people are currently a candidate for that office, according to the the federal election website. So maybe after it's all over, we might invite Mr. Hugo here just to hear his perspective on things, because I'd really like to know why he's doing this and what's going on. So next step, during this next month, we'll be sending out invitations to all of these candidates. And as usual, what we normally end up doing is having to chase them for several months. Like, for example, the city council, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the incumbents doesn't really commit until 6 months from now. But we keep after them and remind them that everybody else is coming. Don't you want to be here? And we'll see what happens. Any questions about what we're going to do, or any suggestions? No? Okay.